My name is Emory Jr. and this is Exercise and Movement Technique. And today we're here with Mary Abrams. And your modality is continuum, yes?
Yes, I teach continuum movement.
Can you please explain to us what continuum movement is and maybe a little bit of the roots of continuum?
Well, continuum is founded and created by a woman named Emily.
Okay.
And she is based in Los Angeles, California.
All right.
Even though she was born and raised in New York City.
She's a defector.
A long time ago, in the 60s. And continuum is basically a fluid inquiry into the human body.
All right.
And with the interest of if we can actually experience ourselves as more fluid, what do we begin to discover about our experience in life?
Okay.
So we recognize that we're a fluid system in terms of how we're biologically designed.
Yes, we're mostly water.
Mostly water, and without the various kinds of fluids in our bodies, we wouldn't be here.
Very true.
And that all of those fluids are in resonance and rapport with other fluid systems, in particular the fluid system of the planet, and then the way the planet is, you could say, in fluid rapport with the rest of the universe.
That's interesting. So your exercise system or wellness system centers on trying to have a person experience the relationship of the fluids inside their bodies. When you say fluid, are we talking about fluid motion, or are we talking about actually trying to sense it and maybe move with it? Can you clarify a little bit?
I usually say it's a both and.
Okay.
In the sense that as we wake up our fluid being, we will be waking up our actual body fluids.
Sure.
And we'll become more aware of their movement in different ways. And probably more importantly, we're interested in is if we experience ourselves as an entire fluid body, you could say, how does that affect the way we move through life? Physically is one way that we experience that very directly.
Okay.
But we also experience that fluidity in all the other ways we, you could say, move about living together.
Sure.
So our emotionality is a fluid system. Our relationships are fluid systems.
Sure.
Our interactions with the environment is a fluid dynamic as well. So we're not just interested in actual physical body fluid experience. It's what happens if our entire experience of a body becomes more fluid.
Well, it sounds as if you're referring to circulation, at least in some regard.
Yeah, circulation is essential.
Sure.
And all of our circulatory systems have, you could say, different rhythms and flows and dynamics
Yes.
within them as well. So in our explorations, we explore, you could say, different vibrational rhythms, different rhythms with breath and sound, and we also explore with different kinds of rhythms of fluid movement with the body. So, for instance, we will do spiral movements, wave-like movements, undulating movements, as well as very, very, very slow wave movements. So we're interested in the whole dynamic range.
And I mean, I know from my own movement experience and training that anything that we do, if you do fluid movement, if you do straight line movement, which doesn't really exist, but
Right.
let's say for the sake of argument that you could do a straight movement, it has different effects on the subtle body, referring to under the surface. So you're really talking about building an awareness that I don't think that is common in most people.
No, it's not common in most people unless somehow they've decided to build that awareness for themselves.
What kind of results, or what's the end game when you're thinking in terms of working with somebody? Is it a therapeutic direction? Is it a conditioning direction? Is it a joyful direction? Are you dealing with the the mental processes of a person, or is it all one package?
Well, a human being is what we could call a somatic entity or somatic organism.
Yes, ma'am.
And so every movement that we make affects every other aspect of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm moving myself physically, I'm actually moving myself emotionally, mentally,
Right.
Spiritually, intellectually. So primarily what we're doing is we're working through, you could say, the sensate, sensuous body,
Okay.
physical body, and we're recognizing how that has an impact on all of the different movements of our emotionality, the way we speak, the way we think, our imaginations begin to change and shift. For me, I think, well, I approach this more from a learning point of view.
All right.
I'm engaging with myself and with others to discover and to learn. And through that, therapy can happen, physical benefit happens, strength happens, release happens, creativity happens, deepening of self-awareness and relationship begins to emerge. And it all happens through this process of discovery and learning.
I see.
So that's what I'm trying to support myself and the people who work with me.
Those are the tools that you have in
Yeah.
your box that you're using.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because there are some systems that are more directional in terms of what their expected outcome is.
Mm-hmm.
I know myself, I'm working multimodal. You're always working with different possible outcomes and also tangential outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because one thing is happening doesn't preclude another thing from happening simultaneously.
Right.
In other words, if you're getting a therapeutic benefit, that does not mean that you're not getting a conditioning benefit for cardiovascular strength, neuromuscular control, and also I cannot differentiate between the well-being of the mind and the well-being of the body because it's very difficult, I think, to be well in the mind if your body is not functioning properly to a certain extent.
Well, the minding, we could call it a minding system, is getting constant information from our body through our affective system, which is the biological roots of our emotionality. So even though we can participate with our minds in certain ways to minimize the negative impact of our mind, we know that in our body, meaning we experience that diminishment of negative impact by actually feeling it.
Right.
Okay, so
that's the feedback.
Right.
In other words, how would you know that things were better if you didn't have it?
And likewise, if my body is struggling in some way, that's creating information for my minding system.
Yes.
And no matter how strong I might be with the techniques I'm working with in my minding system, meditation, concentration, focus, whatever they are, they're all great, and I'm happy for every one of us to explore them.
Sure.
However, they're always getting impeded by the constant, you could say, distress or discomfort of the body. So that there's no separation. They're constantly at play. It's just that I'm either paying attention to it from one portal of orientation as opposed to the other.
Yes.
So to have a whole system of wellness, we need to have dexterity so that we don't only have one entry point into our experience of minding or bodying or the body minding. We need to have multiple entries. And so when you call yours a kind of multi-approach, that's one of the things you're doing. You're giving options for entry into the body experience so that many things can happen.
Well, I learned and discovered many, many years ago that for me, I find that the entry point to a lot of success for people as a whole being comes through simple things they can do for the body. That a single modality of, say, just not putting down psychotherapy, but just talking or just only having that one tool in your toolbox. We are very lucky in that we have a whole variety of ways to affect people on many, many different levels. And that's why I think this kind of work is important. And to have people understand that this is a scientific, rational approach to something that could be seen as ephemeral by some people, could be seen as not concrete enough for them to say, oh, that's not going to work. It isn't. It does work if you are taking a step-by-step progressive approach. It does work, as you say, if you discover and listen and make your adjustments. I think it's a big thing to get somebody to listen to what's going on inside of the period. Just that alone is sometimes a minor miracle, because I always mention that it's difficult to make changes if you're not aware of distress or problems or feedback. You're getting feedback, but as you said, you're ignoring it for whatever reasons, and there are valid reasons for ignoring things, right? If you're in a lot of pain or discomfort, you know, one of the ways that people deal with it is trying to shut off that apparatus, you know, by using masking agents or numbing out, I call it, or whatever, you know, distraction, or whatever it is that, you know, can diminish discomfort.